to Doxxed, the podcast.
Today on Doxxed, the podcast, we're diving into part 4 of SWOOP's captivating YouTube documentary series on the Colleen Ballinger saga. In her most recent installment, SWOOP shares her exclusive interview with Colleen's ex-husband Joshua David Evans. We'll be providing commentary as we watch through the documentary together, highlighting clips from the interview, but we also encourage listeners to watch SWOOP's work on its own, and we want to emphasize that we greatly admire the integrity of SWOOP and her team, and their dedication to uncovering the truth and to empowering victims and survivors. When we jump to a new spot in the source interview, you'll hear this sound. That's to let you know we've skipped ahead. So with that, it's time to grab your popcorn, find your comfy spot, and join us as we explore this fascinating microcosm of internet intrigue. And before we start, make sure to hit that subscribe button and follow us for more stories and insights on doxing, trolling, and toxic parasocial relationships.
I'm really scared to make this video.
I am dreading making this video.
This video is something I never thought I was gonna ever have to make in my life.
I went from the boyfriend to the fiance to the husband.
Joshua and I are getting a divorce.
I just can't be here now. I gotta go find some kind of peace.
I wanted to leave Josh alone.
This is the very first time in 6 or 7 years after it happened where I feel like if I were to say something, I'm not going to be attacked by
millions of people all over the world call you the most vile, horrendous, disgusting, life-ruining words.
Telling me you're nothing without Colleen every single day.
She loved the attention, she loved the status. Do I think she truly loves her fans? I never really felt like she did.
My attention that night on diverted over to Josh.
He mentioned that he always wanted to speak about Josh. His overall aim was to build an audience and then make the Josh video, and he had made that very clear.
I hate that I have to keep having these conversations with you guys.
I'm scared because I've seen what she can do behind the scenes. I'm afraid of her.
I would never make a mistake like that.
And they compared her to a train, and they said, this is the Colleen train. You either get on as a passenger, or she's going to leave the station without you.
Today, I only want to talk about the facts.
And that's just the narrative that's believed.
What about Josh Evans? Friends, that's an answer that the Colleen fandom thought they had figured out for many years because of Colleen's correspondence in these group chats, where the image of Josh over the years became, as Adam McIntyre so astutely put it, the crazy ex-husband.
Okay, it's a lose-lose situation for this man. This seems incredibly draining. He couldn't have spoken up in 2016. He couldn't have 2017, 18, 19, 20. Look what happened to me in 2020, and I wasn't her husband. I was just by her and her fans, a crazy fan. Could you imagine being the crazy ex-husband?
It's this diminishing of Josh from a fully fleshed person, separate from his past relationships, that partially led him to leaving YouTube behind over the following years and fully in 2022 for a more private life with his wife Pamela, working a day job not related to entertainment, and living in a self-described tiny house. And this is more than likely where Josh would have remained if it weren't for a 2-month-long series of tweets, podcast appearances, and interviews that began on June 7th from a grown man named Johnny Silvestri, or John as I'll refer to him, who in the heat of the Colleen Ballinger accusations gaining ground on social media began accusing Joshua David Evans of being worse than Colleen Ballinger.
Josh has an ego, a massive one.
Okay, I want to stop here. We're like 7 minutes in and just say that I love that SWOOP calls Johnny John.
Yeah.
And is like a grown man named John.
Right. Like, don't try to childify yourself to seem more of a victim.
It's one that I can pinpoint and address, not even knowing the dude on a personal level to this day. It turned into this God complex where I think to this day, he has this skewed idea that he was being a mentor.
If you've seen part 3 of the series, you already know exactly how all of that ended. As much as John tried to force Joshua to stay silent, ironically, it was John Silvestri himself.
That's another wild thing that Johnny says, not even knowing the dude, speaking about Joshua, and that was supposed to be the person that groomed him. Like, not even knowing him on a personal level is such a wild thing to slip out of your mouth during that interview with SWOOP, because I guess you could say that you don't know your abuser on a personal level like that. But I feel like when you're in a grooming situation, I mean, it's just, I don't think that's how you would describe it.
I don't think so either. Like, the whole point of grooming is to build a relationship with the victims. That is weird.
You said that you've turned down a number of interviews, and
I've had a lot of mainstream media reach out and asked to do this exact situation, and I said no to all of them. I'm only doing this here. I'm not going to do it anywhere else. I don't want to hop onto other channels.
My intent is never to overwhelm anyone that I speak to, and to, if things become triggering or anything, as I've mentioned, we do have a trained crisis counselor on set. So if we need to stop, if we need to take a break, whatever it is, just let me know, and we can do that. Okay. We just want to make sure.
I think it's so interesting how this whole interview goes and how as they spend time together, like how their dynamic, Josh's and Swoop's, kind of develops throughout the interview. But I love it to start with that he only was willing to talk to her. And I understand why.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he made the right choice because she was really fair to him, which I'm really thankful that she was. But yeah, I just think that's really cool that he only talked to her.
Yeah, I think this was his first ever interview since the divorce.
Yeah, other than the things he's put up on his own page, which mostly have just said that YouTube is really unhealthy for him and he needs to not be on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big deal that he's talking to Swoop. So yeah. And then I just love that that's kind of like he knew coming into it. And then you can see over the course of their interaction that it gives him the space to talk. And so I think he definitely made the right choice. Okay.
I started to feel almost like a character, like a sitcom character, like I was replaceable. One of the questions I would consistently get was, if you weren't married to her, what YouTuber would you want to be married to? And it always struck me odd, because I'm like, why would you even ask me that? Like, this is a real life. This is a real marriage. This is a real relationship. I don't sit here and think, well, if it's not her, which one would I want, And so I would address that on camera and be like, we're not sitcom characters. This is real. So I'm not going to answer that question. And to then have it evolve into real life, it did feel like I was swapped out. It did feel like I was replaced.
Yeah. So in this part, he's just describing how he felt like he was being made to play the role of a character of Colleen's husband during their marriage. And then at the end, it was almost ironic because the entire time he was trying to show up as authentically as possible and convince the audiences that it was real life. And he did get swapped out by this other guy from the Haters Back Off. And I think it strikes me that he was being treated that way. And that is so like Black Mirror dystopian, to have an entire marriage under the spotlight of these fans.
He seems like kind of a softer, more gentle kind of energy, and she does seem like sort of a freight train. And I can see her kind of bulldozing him probably, and probably getting bored with him as soon as she laid eyes on a guy that she could hire to work with every day on her Netflix show. Like, I can totally see why she cast the guy that she picked. It was just like picking a boyfriend out of a lineup, I guess.
It also seems like he has mellowed out since earlier days. I was even just watching today, like Adam was talking on his own channel about this, and how he's grown a lot, how Josh has grown. As this progresses, something that I started to recognize the first time I watched this through the other day was how much he just really strikes me as somebody who meant to be like a good Christian guy. And I think that point keeps coming home in this, but like he really wanted to show up as a good husband.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so sad. I don't know. And he reminds me of a friend I have who's from the deep South, because of the way that he says because. And it just makes that person that I know in my life who says that way is also just somebody who has these very principled, like profound values about family and about showing up for his own wife, and that I think are cultural, that I can imagine Josh being a part of that and coming from that, and then how heartbreaking it would be for your marriage to turn out to be that shallow.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you said I'm assuming you were paraphrasing, but if she was saying something like, how dare you do that in front of my fans, when it was a tour for the two of you. The idea behind that would be that it would be your shared fans. I was curious, if you felt like there was animosity or competition. Were there moments where it was just mutually supportive, or was it more of a one-sided thing, like these are my fans? Or can you walk me through that? Like, what was that like, having a relationship and you guys both creating together and separately in your own right?
I always felt like, well, because she made it obvious with her words and actions, that they were her fans. They were not mine. And when we decided to do a tour together as husband and wife, I thought, wow, she's really like looking at me like an equal. And it meant the world to me. I didn't want to be bigger than her, but the fact that it felt like it's 50-50. Wow, I've never felt 50-50 with her before. And then she was very adamant about doing Miranda on the husband and wife tour. And I didn't understand that. Why do you need to do Miranda when it's billed as us? If you bring Miranda in it, it's just a Miranda show with us. That was one of the times that she did go to therapy with me, and the therapist sided with her. Why would you not allow her? Why would you have a problem with her doing that? And it made me feel like I was being controlling. And I didn't look at it as like trying to control her. I just thought, if we're really doing 50-50, why would you whip out this massive character? If I spoke up and said, I don't see why you're pulling that out. She just didn't understand.
Yeah, what do you think about that part? The therapist siding with Colleen, that there was no problem with having Miranda sings on their shared tour when it was bothering Josh.
I mean, it makes sense to me why he would have a concern about that, because the Miranda Sings character isn't one that partners with anyone or works with anyone. That character would just take over the show. So if it's just going to be the Miranda show, that's one thing. But if they were supposed to do that show together, it makes sense that he would bring that up. I don't understand why the therapist would side with Colleen.
Yeah, I agree.
There was one time where I was on my own tour and she was in Canada filming her show. And she just avoided talking to me for days. And we're married at this point. There was one time, I remember I was about to perform. I had an hour before the show, and I went back to my hotel room, and I finally got her on the phone. And all of this pain and like feelings of being disregarded kind of came to the surface. And I really just kind of let it out on the phone. Was I yelling at her? No. But I was very passionate in the way I talked, very upset. And what she told me days later is, I saw Eric, which is her husband now, right after I got off that phone call with you, and I told him, oh, well, I just got yelled at by my husband for 15 minutes.
Was that something that you felt was happening often, that she would go to him and share details of your relationship?
I don't know if she thought I was blind, but I saw it from the beginning. When she cast him, I remember all the other people that went through the cycle of that audition circuit. That character was supposed to be not conventionally like a good-looking guy. And when she started, wanting him, I thought, he's kind of a good-looking dude. You want him to play this character that's supposed to be like the male Miranda? And I thought, I can't say anything. She's gonna think I'm jealous. She's gonna think I'm controlling. I did bring up, that's odd that you're pushing for him when he's conventionally a good-looking guy.
Now, the person Joshua was talking.
And then that's also such a mind fuck that he could tell ahead of time that she was like moving on to this new guy, and she was even pushing it in his face. That's horrible.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And it also just honestly, the way that the whole, like, we talk a lot on the entire podcast about just like about toxic influencer relationships, but what's that? There's some book that a lot of people read in middle school that's all about turning a classroom into like brainwashing the students in a school or a classroom until they're all kind of behaving like Nazis. It's like a fiction book, but I think it's based on something that was a true story. Anyway, you can see how it happens. The whole story is about how easy it is to get a group of people to be brainwashed into just not questioning what's going on.
Yeah.
And you can tell that it's like Colleen being this kind of train and there is no questioning her choices because she's the moneymaker.
Right.
To this wild degree. Like, what can he even say, even though it's obvious that she's casting this like hot guy for a not hot guy role because she wants to get with him.
Like, but I've actually watched the show. His character is not at all like cute or endearing at all to me. It's weird that she would cast someone that looks like him for that role, other than just to be close to him every day and work with him every day.
Yeah. And then plus she says, Josh relays that she says to him that she's like mentioning it, but then she's like, oh, I think later she says, I didn't really I promise there's nothing there, but there is, Colleen. And then like she also did that to Trisha Paytas with the nudes. Like she did that to a lot of different people where she just got all cutesy and sincerely said like, I don't know, it's not like that. And then it was. So that's a pattern.
Yeah.
Ugh. So you're right. Josh never stood a chance. That's so sad.
Nope.
What you might not know is that while she was working on this show's first season, she was married to Joshua David Evans. 2 weeks before that season came out, on October 14th, 2016, Colleen announced her divorce from Joshua, and less than 2 years after that, Colleen Ballinger got married again to her haters back off co-star Eric Stocklin.
There were just a lot of times that I knew she was hanging out with him. I knew that he had been over to her apartment in Canada, or that she went over to his place and, quote, everyone was there. It's just hard to talk about. There was a time right before the divorce happened, and it was VidCon, and she didn't stay at VidCon very long. She, at that point, kind of thought, I'm bigger and better than this. Well, I loved it, but she left and went back to our house that we had. Someone communicated and relayed to me, hey, while you're out at VidCon, she's having a few people over to the house. And I was like, who? And they said, Eric, Corey and a romantic interest, and Rachel and her boyfriend at the time. And I just thought it was weird. And so I was supposed to spend the night that night near VidCon because it was a long drive. Something in my gut said, no, go back home. So I finished the show. I didn't tell her, and I got in the car and I drove back. She kept messaging me like, are you in your hotel room? Where are you? Where are you? And within the last probably 15 minutes or so of the drive, I came clean and I said, I'm actually almost home. And when I walked through those doors, it reeked of alcohol and cigarettes, and no one was there. Nobody was there. And then I went upstairs, and she was sitting on our bed playing her ukulele. I could tell she had some drinks in her. No big deal. Have a drink. It's your house. She smelled of smoke, and I was like, what's going on? Where is everybody? Oh, they had to go. They had to leave. And I just thought, just the red flags were popping off in my head. Like, why would you have everyone leave when you knew I was showing up, unless you didn't want me to be around it? But the final words I said to her to her face, the last thing I ever said to her to her face, as I was leaving, I turned to her and I said, when you're effing Eric in our bed, I want you to think of me. And I said it right to her face, eyes locked. And her response was, it's not like that. He has a girlfriend. And then what was exposed very soon after was that they had started a relationship. It sucks. That's the last thing I said to her.
That's like, if you have not said anything to her.
She threatened me a few months later through text that if I continued to talk about her in any way, shape, or form, is what she said. If you mention me in any way, I'm going to get lawyers on you. And my response to that was her branded slogan. All I said was spread happiness. And that was the last thing I wrote to her, with a little sunflower, because that's what she always used.
On September 1st, 2023, Joshua and I hopped on Zoom for a few more questions I had for him. Namely, I wanted to get his reaction to what happened in part 3 of my Colleen docuseries, but I also wanted to get him to elaborate further on a few topics that he brushed on.
That's such a chilling final interaction that he describes. So he goes home. He doesn't tell her he's on his way home because he was told by somebody else while they're at this VidCon or whatever that she's home with Corey. I forget who else he just mentioned, but like 2 other couples, and then her and this new guy that she's replacing Josh with. He tells her when he's 15 minutes away. He gets back. No one's there. She's sitting on her bed playing a ukulele once again.
That damn ukulele.
Reeking of alcohol, and he says smoke, and he intuitively knows that there's something going on, and he says, I want you to think of me. I mean, that's wild that was their last interaction, and he must have just so strongly known. And then you have to wonder, what was she doing? Do you think that the friends were never there? Do you think that she just rushed them out because she felt weird about it? Or like,
I mean, she might have said that a bunch of people were going to sort of cover herself, like if Josh were to ask where she was. But it very well might have been her and the guy. that she was cheating with.
Yeah, like just the two of them.
Yeah.
Hard
I
to
mean,
tell.
why would you have the guy that you're cheating with at your place with a bunch of other people to witness it, you know?
Well, yeah, and just the weirdness of, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I guess she could have just been doing like a power play, expecting nobody to say anything. But
Maybe.
yeah, maybe they were just hanging out.
Poor
Either
Josh.
way, you can't really imagine that entire scene except for in a very dark color casting. Like it's very ominous to imagine like walking up the stairs and then she's sitting on the bed playing the ukulele.
God.
All right.
Anytime I had an inkling, do you have a thing for that person? It only happened like 3 or 4 times. But every single time I had an inkling, it happened.
Sorry, when you say it happened, are you saying that she had cheated multiple times, like with different people, or?
In the first 3 months of us dating, I had this weird feeling in my gut that we were exclusive. We were saying, I love you. It was this whirlwind romance. I had this feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. I didn't know what it was. And I did a foul thing. She walked out, she was doing something. She left the apartment and I pulled up the laptop that she was on and I read some Facebook private messages that she had been sending. And it broke my heart. I caught her sending back and forth messages to a guy that I had already brought up. Hey, who is this guy and why is he saying this kind of stuff to you? Like, I don't think that's appropriate. And she would always be like, oh no, he's gay or he's not into me. What?
Dude, that's that same pattern again. He even early in the relationship catches her texting some guy after he had an intuition that she was cheating with the guy. And she's like, oh no, he's gay. She just does this all the time, apparently.
She's just terrible. Or maybe she was just terrible to him because she had power over him and knew it. Because I don't know if she's doing this to her current husband the way she's did this to him.
But also, if she did it to him at this point in the relationship so early on and then got away with it, she learns that she can do it again.
Yeah.
So The Wave is the name of the book I was thinking about that everyone reads in high school.
Never heard of it. Sounds very interesting.
It's interesting. I don't know. It's interesting. Okay.
Found was that in those messages, she was saying exactly to him what she had said to me when we were first starting to date and get to know each other. She was using the same catchphrases, the same, you're the best in the West. That sticks out to me because she used to say that about me, and she said it to him.
Okay, not to pause again so quick, but then he says that he's noticing in those messages to this other guy that she's using some of these same catchphrases, like you're the best in the West. And that reminds me of being love bombed by somebody, and then which happened to me, and then later on finding out that person was definitely saying some of those same exact phrases to other people as well to make them feel love bombed at the same time. And they were very meant to make me feel special. And that was so jarring when I was like, oh my God, you said that to another person. Like, not that I'm like big-headed enough to think that has to just be about me, but it was clearly designed to make me feel special. And then it's like very, like your heart just sinks into your butt when you realize that somebody has been saying something like that to more than one person. So I really identify with that. Like, ew, he's also the best in the West, Colleen. Like, that's really love bombing and gross. That's so gross.
And it's not even like a cute thing to say.
No.
Kind of cringe.
God, yeah. Colleen is more than kind of. I don't like using that term cringe, but she's definitely intentionally cringe content, and just the whole persona is not as cute as I think she thinks it is.
No, the whole Miranda Sings persona is cringe. It's the epitome of cringe.
It's meant to be. But it's all, yeah. I mean, cringe, I don't like cringe because it's usually directed in ableist ways at things, but also her entire character is ableist. So that is also the point. Yeah. Okay.
And I confronted her about it. The next day, I was still upset. And I remember her saying, if this is how you're going to be, if you're not over this now, then I can't be in a relationship with you, period. If you're still going to be upset. And I thought to myself, but I'm upset because I caught you talking to another guy, all lovey-dovey, all sweet. Now you're upset with me for still being upset 24 hours later. But in that moment, it taught me, if I speak up about something that I caught that I didn't think was right, her response is, then I'm out, then I'm gone. 2 months later, swoop, the same thing happened.
With a different person?
No, same person. He was saying, I'm so sorry. If I got you in trouble with your boyfriend, I'm so sorry. And she said, please don't apologize. Do not apologize. We can keep doing this as long as my boyfriend doesn't know about it. I have no problem with this.
Ew. So he catches her again with the same guy 2 months later because she insists he has to get over it or they can't be in a relationship, which really is her just saying, I expect to be able to get away with this with whoever I'm with. And then 2 months later, she's talking to the same guy and he says, I'm sorry I got you in trouble. And she reassures him, we can keep doing this as long as my boyfriend doesn't know about it.
Yeah, terrible. And also, what? Joshua, leave her. Like,
well,
wow.
Yeah, but it's
he
like
married her after this?
But it's like being conditioned, you know? It's like he wouldn't have been allowed to keep dating her if he was going to be the kind of person to stand up for himself and not be walked over like that.
Yeah. Awful.
Awful.
Are you tired of feeling unsafe online? Do you want to learn how to protect yourself from cyberbullying, doxing, and other forms of online harassment? Then look no further than Doxxed the Podcast. Visit the website doxxedthepodcast.com to sign up for the Doxxed free ebook full of helpful tips and resources for online safety. Plus, when you sign up, you'll receive the weekly newsletter with the latest updates on upcoming content. There are many ways to connect with Doxxed, including Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Discord. Have a story to share or feedback to give? Use the contact form on the site to reach out or leave a voice message to be featured on the show. And for exclusive content, subscribe to the Doxxed Supercast to gain access to the private podcast feed with member-only exclusives. Take control of your online safety and join the Doxxed community today.
So I'm curious because you haven't shared much about your relationship. Why now are you sharing this?
This is the very first time in 6 or 7 years after it happened where I feel like if I were to say something, I'm not going to be attacked by hundreds of thousands of teenagers.
Right. Now, when Colleen and Joshua got divorced, Joshua was almost immediately met with constant daily attacks in comments and in his DMs, as well as on gossip websites like Gossip Garden and Gossip Bakery. It's been rumored for years that Joshua, in response to the constant harassment, became obsessed with what people were saying about his divorce and began not so subtly trolling the gossip blogs for information. There are some interesting allegations relating to Joshua's mindset from this time period that we discovered after the initial interview, so I decided to ask him directly about it. We have seen a relationship that you had of sorts with a site called Gossip Garden and Gossip Bakery. These both ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, they do.
This part is interesting because Swoop brings up that he was maybe going on these gossip sites, Gossip Garden and Gossip Bakery, and just trying to get information or kind of, I don't know, be a part of that kind of exchange on the gossip sites. And we had a couple comments on our last episode that was on this topic about it, where people were kind of going back and forth about how much that really matters. And I do think the people that care, that are trying to weigh the evidence and see if they think Josh is a bad person, kind of would care about that. But if you're on the other end of a smear campaign, if you're on the target end of a smear campaign, which he was, sounds like, allegedly, yeah, you want to know. Yes, you're going to go on the gossip sites. Yes, you're going to like look, and there's a level where it's like unhealthy to engage, but it is totally unrealistic as an audience, as somebody that's just watching something like this unfold, to expect somebody that's on the target end of that, who's facing it daily, to not care or not be tempted to look at what's being said or even try to influence it through like burner. Like, there is nothing to me that is morally wrong with knowing that something that's being said about you in a gossip site is a lie and trying to, when you can't put your face in front of it because of a bunch of weird politics of this, go and try to not put your face in front of it but still correct the information. There's nothing morally wrong about that. So this is kind of an interesting part of this where he comes clean about it, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think there's rarely a perfect victim when it comes to this social media, YouTube, TikTok, whatever. There's rarely a victim that's gonna be the perfect victim to everyone who is an onlooker weighing in on who's good and who's bad. I think it is really unfair to judge someone that is the target of a smear campaign for every move that they make. It's like if you breathe too hard, it's see, you're egging it on, see, you're part of the problem.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's terrible. It's really unfair. And unless you've been the target of something this massive, you cannot understand and you cannot judge. It is unfathomable how stressful something like that is, especially for as long as he went through it. So
Yeah.
do I judge him for literally anything that he's done in terms of like going on a fucking gossip site? Absolutely not. No. It's hard to know what to do.
Yeah, same here. And then, in fact, that's kind of obvious, especially because there's a bunch of legal crap going on. And it sounds like she threatened him with legal action if he's ever going to talk about it. But of course, you're going to talk about it. If somebody's got your name in their mouth and they're saying lies, why would you not correct that? Why would you not want to? There's, there's nothing morally wrong with that. There's nothing legally wrong with that, although you can definitely be punished anyway by people that go after you or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting that a lot of people care about that. But when you start to really look at, like, we've looked at a couple of different situations like this, and you can be wrong, but there are kind of telltale signs of the person that is the being targeted by the smear campaign.
Right.
And there's a certain point where you can see how the public, there's some people that just keep wanting the person that is clearly targeted by the smear campaign to give more and more and more evidence and to give more of a response every single time there's a question about whatever they did in response, or
right,
to account for everything. And there's a certain point where it's like, no, you, the audience, need to learn to recognize that this person was the target of a smear campaign, and it needs to stop being about every little thing that they did in response and since then for you. Like, that's
right,
not the point. You really are just contributing to abusing someone if you're playing on that team where you're like, my main point is meticulously documenting what Josh Evans did on the gossip sites. Like, you need to zoom out because you are part of someone being abused.
right. And if you have the wherewithal to zoom out even a little bit, recognize that usually in situations like this, there's a power dynamic at play. And when the target of the smear campaign is also being threatened with legal action for saying anything, that's a problem. That speaks to the person making the threat to the person that they victimized in the first place. When when abusers want their victims to stay quiet or else, that's a problem. Why would you pile on to that person and say that they're the one in the wrong? Why would it doesn't make sense. It's so frustrating because we went through something so similar.
Absolutely. And it's a way to dominate people. And you're right. And it's all like power dynamics. And so the power dynamic part of it becomes really interesting in this story too, because this is a white man and he's also an adult man. And then a lot of the audiences are children. And so it's really hard for him, especially with his face, to go on there and refute it, because then he's an adult man like dealing with all these children. And there's very important, I don't know, nuances about the power dynamics of that. So we'll keep getting there.
Did you feel that for a period of time, that there was a level of silencing that was being done to you in regards to being able to speak about your experience in that relationship?
I absolutely felt silenced. And I felt like I didn't know specifically then that she was orchestrating things, because what she presented online was not go after him. But what she was saying to people in DMs was, he's this, he's that, making fun of me, critiquing things, making claims about me that are not true, things that never happen. But anytime I did try to open up, the amount of hate, the passionate hate that I would get from the people online, it was just never ending. And even when I would stop talking about it or alluding to it, and I would post a normal thing about nothing regarding that, the comments would be full of it. Full of, go end yourself. You know, you don't deserve to exist. I know where your next show is. I ended up hosting another end of VidCon party the next year, and the amount of death threats I got before that event terrified me, because at this point, Christina Grimmie had been killed at a meet and greet at a venue that I had performed in. She was not even like a personality type. She's just a wonderful hearted singer that has so much to give. And I had the thought of, well, if someone is innocent and to me as pure as her, it happened to her, well, there's a lot of people that don't like me. I have to take it seriously. I can't just be like, it's nothing. They're just being dramatic. I didn't believe that. I was scared to go on. I was scared. I had to tell my manager at the time, and they gave me security. I had never had security before. And it was so daunting and weird to think the reason why I have security, just to go from backstage to the stairs of the stage, was because someone might try to do something.
That's really scary too, just that there was a real threat of, there were real death threats, there were death threats that he was getting sent. And that can be so terrifying. And it can feel like, again, when you're the audience, it can feel flippant, but when you're living through receiving death threats that are anonymous, it can really shake you up. And I'm glad he got security, because as he mentioned, someone really did get shot pretty soon before, pretty close before that. People should not feel nearly as entitled to say shit like that, but it's the anonymity. But anyway.
Yeah, it is being able to hide. Because why is it with every internet drama, there's always death threats from random people? Like, why does everyone have to die because you're witnessing an internet drama? Yeah. Why? It's so extreme and so weird.
Yeah, it's like just a displacement from humanity, I think, is why people do that. I don't know.
Do you think that she is watching everything that's been happening right now? Do you think she tunes into the coverage? What do you think is going through her head right now?
As much anger as I feel towards her, I know what she's feeling. Even now, I don't wish that on her, because I know that when we were together for 7 years, that the worst thing that could happen to her is if she lost her fans. I can't imagine the depths of what she's feeling, and I know it's not good. I do worry. So I feel like I was saying this. I worry about her. I don't want, she's got kids. She's got babies, and I don't wish pain on her. And I know she's feeling it. I know she feels like everything that she ever had crashed. This is coming from a guy that it already happened to me. I lost everything. I fell in love with an image that she gave me, and I held on to that image even though all the cracks started within a month. I held on to the image and I fought for the image. But to like think of her now, there is no image that she can put on. She can't hide anything. People see now. Adam even said, the mask slipped. I think it's true. And I think she never thought it would happen either.
At this point in my conversation with Joshua, a few things became clear. Now, of course, there was the distancing language and all the allegations of mistreatment, but he also would often say things that almost sounded protective of Colleen. And in listening to all of this, there was one question that I couldn't shake from my mind. You said that there was an image of her that you loved.
Yeah.
Did you ever love her?
Yeah, I did. I fought for the image because I did see the good stuff. I did see the positive things about her. She wasn't always fully this. And the more fame that happened and the higher she rose to the top, the more she leaned into, I don't have to change a damn thing about myself.
Do you think the way she is being characterized now, do you think that that's accurate?
I feel bad answering these questions, because I don't want it to come off like I'm on here to like bash her and drag her. She's got enough of that happening without me needing to chime in. If I'm being honest with myself and honest with you and anyone watching this, I think this is the truest depiction of her that has ever been seen publicly. This is the most authentic version of her that has ever been publicized. What I'm seeing, like, especially in that video, the ukulele video, that's a version of her that I know. I know that person. I lived with that person. I saw those eyes. I think everyone has the ability to change, look inward, do the hard work. I just don't think she has ever stepped up to the plate to do that.
That whole part is so striking. I just want to comment on it quickly because he's basically just saying this is the most authentic version of Colleen that anyone's ever seen publicly. And also it's interesting to think about whether she's watching this interview, and I'm sure that she is, and whether she has people in her life that could even help her walk it back, because Josh seems concerned about her mental health and mentions that she has kids, babies. And that is something that we also had to deal with, like this weird issue where people who are abusive feel often like when you name their abuse that is you being abusive to them, and it's not, but it can very much push them to reacting as if they've been abused and trying to make you feel like as if you've been abusive to them as an avoidance of accountability. And people can even convince themselves of that to the point where they really can just hurt themselves and then kind of push it on to, well, it's because you said something about me being abusive to you or whatever.
Right.
And you can just feel the full weight of Josh feeling that responsibility. And SWOOP continues to push as we go on here, but and make some really good points about it. But you can just feel that he cares a lot. And yeah, and then I can just imagine Colleen watching this and being like irate behind the scenes about it.
Right. But I feel like what he's saying about what's being seen now of Colleen is the most authentic depiction of her yet. There's so much confirmation of that if you watch all these YouTube people, that like YouTube creators that are covering this and showing clips of other people speaking to her real character, speaking to who she actually is off camera. And I'm glad that he feels empowered to be honest about, you know, who she is matching with what we're seeing now, because there's been so many murmurings about it over the years, and then Adam tried really hard to speak to it and was shot down over and over again. And it's just like, yes, more truth and more confirmation is coming out over time.
I'm gonna be completely honest. This next section brings someone into the situation I never expected to be named in this interview. You had mentioned before about the divorce video. Was that a 10 steps ahead moment?
I'd say it was at least 3 steps ahead, maybe not 10. The divorce happened very suddenly. Things were bad. I knew things were off, and we were arguing all the time. She didn't ever want to talk to me. She didn't ever want to talk through it, because she was either out of town and wouldn't talk to me out of town, or when she was always busy. Busy. I was shown some things when I was at Playlist in Washington, D.C. in 2016. Receipts, proof of things that she was doing.
Can you tell me what you're referring to?
Part of me still wants to protect her, because what she was doing was awful.
At the very least, can you tell me what it has to do with?
This specific one was what she was saying about me behind the scenes on our honeymoon to another massive YouTuber. She basically said, I told Josh some things and he wrecked our hotel room.
She told this to another
very large YouTuber, yes.
Okay. Can I ask who that was?
Gross. So she's talking to Shane Dawson and obviously other people privately in their lives, and smear campaigning Josh before Josh is even aware. And that's one of the most sick things about it. There's this whole public smear campaign, but there's also the kind that happens among your friends, which I've also experienced, where you just have one day you realize, wow, everyone in this room has a preconception of me that is very different than what happened. And in this case, it's that she was saying that on their honeymoon that he was getting in, scary fights with her when they were having a great honeymoon. But yeah, it's just that horrible sinking feeling of realizing that this has been because it has to be intentional. You don't accidentally lie about what happened like that,
Right.
Smear campaign that's going on among his friends. And that is, in some ways, I think that's harder. And I've been through both kinds. in some ways, I think that's harder than the public kind, because it's like you can really literally be in a room physically with people and suddenly have that realization, like, oh, everyone thinks the thing, which why would they if somebody wasn't just lying?
Right. It's really eerie. It's a terrible feeling.
Terrible. Have you ever gone through that with friends?
Not real friends, no.
Real friends, I mean, yeah.
With people, but not with real friends.
Just as a reminder, I've reached out to Colleen Ballinger for comment on all of this, and she has not returned comment. This is genuinely something that I'd like to hear her point of view on, and I am fully acknowledging that what we just heard is Joshua's perspective on the matter.
I had a show with Julian Solomita and Arnold Telegarda, and we had a little parody group called The Shadows.
The Shadows, yes.
And it was a joke. It was supposed to be a joke. It's like, we're aware of who we are. We're aware we're in the shadows, so let's make a whole thing of it. Tons of YouTubers went on like a big party bus. I found out that later she was talking so negatively and just mean about me and how embarrassing that was, and that she had warned me not to do a show like that.
When you said that there was a big party bus and these YouTubers and everything, do you remember what show that was?
That was the opening show of Shadow Tour. We only did 2 shows.
The Irvine show then?
Yeah, California.
So while she's with you, there seemingly to support you,
right?
And you're saying that she was basically talking about you to these YouTubers who were all there to also watch the show.
And she might try to twist it and say she was just poking fun. That's a lot of how she would do things. Is like, I'd call her out on certain things. She'd be like, "You're taking it so seriously."
Can you give me an example of like what she would call poking fun that you felt was like, maybe disrespectful or?
I don't say she'd make fun of me, but she would just belittle things that I would ask for, as if like the audacity. Are you serious? And I'd feel so small. I sure feel like it. She sure makes me feel that way every time. She's making fun of me. She's sending things and making fun of me. And then that came out too about like them saying I plagiarized a song on my album that I never plagiarized. I never did. But the fact that she made it a whole joke.
Whoop, there's the plagiarism. You, me, and Joshua David Evans accused of plagiarism in a smear campaign.
Why is it always that?
Why is it always plagiarism?
God.
Such a frustrating accusation, especially when it's just completely baseless, because you're like, no, like show me the words that I plagiarized, and no one ever does. Now you're just
no one ever does. No one ever has proof, and then you're put in a situation where you feel like you have to scramble to disprove what they're saying, which is hard to do when it's just not true. Like, why would I need to show evidence that I didn't plagiarize? It's so fucking frustrating.
Yeah, it is. And it's also just like, it's very serious when you do put a lot of because again, both you and I were accused of plagiarism, you with your books and me with my academic writing and my blog. And especially when it's something like serious, like you've published a book or you want to have some kind of academic position and career, it's a big deal to be accused of plagiarism. But then you really do have to consider the source, because it's not a big deal to the people accusing you when they're just anonymous online bullshitters. Like, that's absolutely nothing. But it's a big deal when it's your career and your life, and it's like your words and what was meant to represent you.
Yeah.
It's just a huge difference between the way that people feel when they're making that accusation baselessly, because it's I don't think it sits with just like a normal person who hasn't produced a ton of writing, how big of a deal that is when you've put your heart into your writing and it's you. And it's almost like you just ripped it off and scammed someone. Like, not only is that a lie, that's just completely devastating.
Thank you for listening. Find additional content at doxxedthepodcast.com.